Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I am your host, Bob Mata. Welcome to Defense Diaries, where we are continuing our coverage on the expose of who has to have been the dirtiest cop in the history of the United States. And I'm joined by the one and only Bill Dorsch. What is up, Bill?
Hey, Bob. How you doing? Glad to be here again. So bright and early.
Bright and early, Bill. You're up with the roosters, man.
They're gonna go fishing.
Crowing you out of bed, man. What did 5 a.m., 4 a.m.? It's crazy early for you out there, huh?
Yeah. But it's important to me and to a lot of families, so I want to get it out there, Bob.
Definitely, Bill. So what's going on, my friend? What's new? What's good?
Well, I guess the first thing is, and this is an example. I mean, the last couple weeks, Bob, I have not had a single complaint about my squeaky chair.
Wow.
Okay.
Did you get a new chair, or did you fix that one?
Well, what happened, Bob, is some kind people, they started a GoFundMe page. All right. Because what I found out was the 10W40 was the solution, all right, to it. But this is a big chair. And, you know, they only sell in Europe the 10W40 in these small cans.
Oh,
well, you can imagine how many small cans of this I needed to fill a 55-gallon drum so that I can dip this chair in it. And
yeah.
Once that was done, Bob,
small cans over there. Do they have a WD like a huffing issue over there, or Europeans like
no? All I could find on the shelf was these little ones, and they had we had to order a lot of them through Amazon. We had a whole truck deliver them. I mean, it's a lot. There's not much in this can.
Wow.
You know, but I was causing a lot of people some, nightmares and things like that. People were saying they couldn't sleep because of the chair. And hopefully now, the last 2 weeks, nobody's complained. So I'm very, very, very happy about that.
You know, it's like they don't know how much they miss it until it's gone, though. You know, I think it's going to be one of those things. I think people had grown very fond of the squeaky chair. And, you know, for me, the downside is now they're going to know that it's my chair that is also squeaky. You know, because I too have a squeaky chair, and I have not fixed it. I like to give that little extra sound to my people. So that's amazing. That's amazing. So yeah. We also have some other exciting news. If we've got any of our listeners or our viewers that are going to be at CrimeCon UK, you're joining us there, man.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm going to London. I'm used to flying over London, and but this time I'm going to land. And
what? Hold on, Bill. What? Do you need to come through? Hold on, Bill. I got to turn the camera off for 1 second. Chat it up. Tell them about what you got going on in London for 1 second while I'm off.
I'm going to join you at the CrimeCon convention in London, which is a big 2-day event, Saturday and Sunday. I think it's September 21st and 22nd. And I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have thousands of people there, I understand, at this annual event. So I'll be there.
It's gonna be a big event.
Yeah, and for me, it's a real good opportunity to meet other people, of course, in the industry. And also one of the big things. Oh, and by the way, the last month of August, that was the biggest sales month I've had for my book on Gacy.
Yeah.
And so I want to
Yeah.
thank all the people that bought this book, Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the book is here because as much as Bob and I talk, we can't get it all out there. Like in the book, there's a lot of stuff in the back in the appendix that you've never seen before, never heard responses from the police, the state's attorney's office, any of that. It's all in this book. All right.
Yeah, and plus you can't get like the details that you have in
For
the
sure.
book are we're never going to be able to duplicate that us talking. So the book's a one of a kind peek into your brain, and we get to hear the stories in the most vivid detail possible. So I mean, obviously the book, what they say, man, the book's always better than the movie, right? So
yeah, you should always read the book and see the difference between that and what you see in this film.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You're gonna.
Plus, if you're in the UK, Bill is going to be signing books.
Oh yeah, I
So-
got a signing time there too for that convention, which should be very interesting.
That's going to be great.
I'm bringing a ton of books with me.
Good,
which is
good. Don't
which is
strain yourself, Bill, lugging heavy books.
Well, my
over the
wife is
world.
upset, Bob. My wife is upset, and I don't blame her because she likes to pack to the max when she travels. But this time,
Yeah.
she's taking my book with her in the suitcases.
In lieu of clothes.
But because our 20th wedding anniversary is the 25th of September, okay, I've told her, well, we're taking the books there, but the suitcases are empty, so you'll be able to do some shopping. So that has turned the table more in my favor.
What a move!
Boy.
What a move! It's like
I had to escape that. I had to escape the wrath of the woman who couldn't bring.
It's like you've been
10 pairs of
married
shoes.
for like a lot of years, man. So you're actually you're dipping out of England a little bit earlier because you've got a big occasion with you and your wife coming up. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's the anniversary on the 25th of September. So I'm leaving. I'm getting there on the 18th, leaving on the 24th. We're flying back to here, and then we're getting in the car and we're going to Greece to meet some friends from the USA to celebrate our anniversary.
So this guy gets to, like, when he wants to go for a drive, he ends up in the Greek Isles. What a guy!
I'm going to Greece tomorrow. I'm going to Greece again tomorrow. Jeez. I'm going to my favorite city, which is Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is the second largest city in Greece. Absolutely phenomenal. So entertaining, beautiful, history, shopping, the water, the restaurants, entertainment.
Bill, you're a Chicago guy. Where do I end up, like, in a 3-hour drive? If I go north, east, west, which I end up either in Wisconsin, Indiana, or Iowa. That's it, man.
It's a 2.5 hour ride for me to get through. Well, I have to go through the border, of course, but 2.5 hours from here to Thessaloniki, and it's a fabulous city. It's my favorite city of all the cities I've been to.
Bill, color me jealous, man. Color me jealous. That's
so I encourage anybody, of course, anywhere you go in Greece, anywhere, especially along the water, it's fantastic. It is fantastic.
It sounds amazing. I've never been to Greece. I'm dying to get to Greece. I've heard rave reviews. I grew up with a Greek kid, Spiros Georgiakis.
Well, you flew across the pond, Bob. You got all the way to England. All you got to do is take another flight, and you could be here in 3 hours.
Listen, man, like if like, Bill was tempting us, but we're bringing the girls, the little ones, and they're missing a week of school as it is. I get so educational anyway. But believe me, I'm invading your home, and you're taking us all over the place when we get over.
I would enjoy having you here. Believe me, and my wife both.
Great. It would be great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
We'll do that in the future. But I want to get back to the people who've asked me about, we got so in depth with the Gacy stuff and bringing out many new things that were never heard before, that there have been a lot of people contacting me and saying, I want more Gacy, more Gacy, more Gacy. Well, this pause with Gacy is intentional. All right. Because even though I've written this book, I'm still gaining more insight and information through my FOIAs and meeting with people. And that's not to mention the fact that soon I'm going to be joining you in the USA. As Bob and I have got planned, folks, we're going to be meeting with people that have vital information about Gacy, accomplices, victims, locations. All right. So we're going to be going there to set all this up for further discovery, which we're going to share with you as we go along.
Of course.
So
of course.
I'm looking really forward to that with the Gacy event, because it's not over. There's still questions. My FOIAs, I mean, like this is some of my FOIA work from where I've been sending these FOIAs to people in government, state's attorney, sheriff's department,
Bill, what
various
is a
police
FOIA
departments.
for those who might not know what a FOIA is?
The FOIA stands for the Freedom of Information Act, and it exists throughout government, and it is supposed to allow citizens to petition the government through this FOIA request for information and documents. You can FOIA any state or federal agency with a FOIA and ask to see certain records. Of course, that exists, the FOIA Act, and it's got strict requirements, like they're supposed to respond to you in 5 days, you know, that they've received your request and they are going to comply with your request. But they will, at least I have to state geographic here. All my FOIAs, or most of my FOIAs, have been Chicago area. Okay. Yeah. The police department, the sheriff's department, state's attorney's office, and stuff like that. They do all they can to not supply you with the information, even though the act says they have to. They will deny, they will stay silent and say they didn't get it. All right. Or they'll say the person assigned to that task is on vacation right now or out of the country on another investigation. So they continue to do that. And I've had FOIA requests go for years without being answered until I have to FOIA again. And then I have to often go to the Illinois State Attorney General's office and say, hey, this is my FOIA request. They've had it for 4 months and I've not gotten a single reply from them. I want to know why they're not answering the question. So the state attorney's office for Illinois will send a letter to this various agency that you sent the FOIA to, requesting or telling them to respond to my request. And often, well, not often, many times, they will still ignore that letter from the state of Illinois. Okay. And you know, but I have to be persistent, and I dig. I'm a pest. I know I am. But you know, if you don't ask questions, you don't get answers, Bob.
That's right.
You know, and the other thing, I'm persistent because, you know, you remind me, thankfully, yes, thank you, Bob, I'm getting older. Okay, and I'm 80 years old now. And some years ago, I changed my motto about my life, and because I'm trying to get this done, I think of it like this: tomorrow is not guaranteed. Okay.
True.
So what good am I doing accumulating information, vital information? And yeah, a lot of it is it's not looking good for government, what I found. But what good is it if I don't reveal it before I die?
100%.
So that's why
I have the grave, right? You can't take it to the grave.
I go to the grave, you know, you can put it on my tombstone. You can't put it all on the tombstone, Bob. Yeah. It's in the books. It's in the books.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
in the podcast.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm doing all this. And I'm doing it because the families of these kids, the families of the Gacy victims, the families of the Guevera victims, you know, in the Guevera cases, Bob, as a detective, you're a homicide detective, you get assigned to a homicide that just occurred, and you dig into it. And what good is it to the family if you knowingly arrest somebody who is innocent of the homicide? The real offender's still out there.
Right.
So what would make you move to clear a case by identifying the wrong person, knowingly identifying the wrong person? And I can tell you, Bob, I'm certain of what it is. It's all about the city's reputation. You can't stop homicides It's got a horrific effect on the reputation of the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
I told people about the time I got on the airplane with the dentist from Kosovo who was flying to Illinois to Chicago for a dental convention or more training. And when he found out in talking next to me that I was from Chicago, he said, "Oh, you're from Chicago, man. I'm my first time going there, and I'm really afraid of going there." He said, "Because of all the murders." And I turned, I said, "Didn't your country just get over a civil war a couple of years ago? And you're worried about going to Chicago?" Yeah, but that's what people think. Even when I travel in Europe, I don't care where I go. They find out you're from Chicago. You go, you get that kind of.
No, that's not even a joke. That's like, so my wife, Allison, who grew up in Pennsylvania, when she found out her father had moved the family to Illinois because he was starting a startup back right around when we were both going into law school. And she said when she first was moving here, she was literally afraid of getting gunned down by gangsters. Like that, like flat out. Like she wasn't like, it wasn't tongue in cheek. It was like, that is the reputation of the city, and it's unfortunate, but it's true. And it plays right into exactly what you're talking about. Like the city of Chicago has a vested interest in trying to stifle as much as they can in terms of what gets out to the public. And like to talk about like the FOIAs, corruption takes more than just the government wanting the cases to get closed. You need that cop who's mortgaged their morality to where they've got no problem doing what they're doing. I mean, like we talked about this a little bit last week, like what kind of a human being do you have to be? How can you look yourself in the mirror knowing that you're putting innocent people in prison for life? Like you're putting like a person on death row. Like how do you sleep with that on your head? And like you slept like a baby. Like the guy's unconscionable. It's like it's just a whole different thing, man. Like there's a lot of moving parts, and you need to have the right players at the cop level in order to make sure that happens for the city. And and it's like what you say in your book. What do you have on there? Like, what is it? Ask no questions.
Don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask,
don't tell. Like, I mean, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's a shame that people go along with it. But you know what? I came on the police department in 1970, and like everybody else, I started in patrol in the 20th district, Foster Avenue. Okay, the uptown area of Chicago. We had a lot of crime. The city, Chicago, had some of the highest volume for service of any city in the country. The phone calls coming in, and statistics mattered back in 1970 just as much as they do today when you're talking about government and crime. I remember when I was in patrol and you go out and you take a case report for somebody broke into the house, okay? And they stole stuff and they got away and the people called the police to report it. Well, you wrote the burglary report out. You brought it in for your supervisor to look at and approve and sign. And the supervisor would go, how'd they get in the house? Well, people went out, they went to the store, they left the door unlocked. Oh, there was no forced entry. No forced entry. This is a theft. It's not a burglary. It's a theft, Bill. Rewrite this report, make it a theft. The reason they're doing that, Bob, is because Part 1 crimes. They want to knock down the total for the city of Chicago. All right. So it's better to have a case knocked down from a burglary to a theft, and it doesn't look so bad in the statistics. The same thing with robberies. You go in, you had a case where you went out, the person that was robbed was a 68-year-old woman walking down the street with her cane, and somebody came up and dragged her to the ground and ran off with her purse and got away. Well, that's a forcible robbery, okay? But your sergeant's saying, oh, we got too many robberies, Bill. Rewrite, and was she injured? Well, no, she was dragged and that, but she wasn't in, so she didn't go to the hospital. Oh, Bill, it's a theft. Don't make it a robbery. And you know, that's the way you hide stuff. You hide statistics. And I'm in the Guevara cases. I'm talking about one case in particular that they hid, but we're going to get into that later in the Guevara cases. But the whole thing for the bosses, they get assigned. See, the system is the mayor picks the police superintendent. Okay, if he comes from outside, from another jurisdiction, and gets the job, he's indebted to the mayor only for that job. But anybody who is police superintendent knows that if there's bad press and things go against the police department, that he could fall. And that goes downhill too. The superintendent tells the district commanders, the area commanders, you know, we got to knock down crime, this and that, because if you don't, you're going to wind up working as a captain on midnights, you know, and they don't want to do that. So they put pressure on them for various reasons to do things. All right. I want to bring up something though that I found the other, a couple weeks ago. I watched by chance a movie. It's called The Changeling. Have you ever heard this?
I have.
Movie?
I've seen it. It's been a long time,
Okay.
but I've seen it. Yeah.
I didn't know about this movie, but I watched it, and it made me right away connect with Mrs. Marino and her story about the police coming to her house because she was complaining about the identification of her son and telling her she was under arrest for homicide and keeping her for days at Area 3. I didn't know about this case. This is a true case, The Changeling. This is from an incident that happened in 1928. That's almost 100 years ago.
Was that your first year on the force?
Yeah, God, yeah.
I'm just playing.
Okay, that's one.
I jest, Bill. I jest, obviously.
Okay, no, but in 1928, this was shocking to me, and I found out this whole movie was true. In a town in it was called the Wineville Chicken Coop murders, where kids were disappearing, and one woman in particular, well, she reported her kid missing, and then a little while later, a child turned up in another city in St. Louis area, saying that he was her son. So she was ecstatic that they found her son and he was alive. But when they brought the kid back, they had the press there to see this reunion of the kid getting off the train to meet with the mother. And the mother said, "This isn't my son." And the police officer rank, I don't remember right now from the incident, but he told her, "Well, no, ma'am, this is your son. This is your son." She said, "No, I know my own son. It's not him." And he said, "Well, why don't you take him home and try him out for a few weeks?" Do you remember that from the movie? That was said to her. Yeah,
I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah,
I think
I
there
never
have
saw
been two changelings.
Yeah, it starred Angelina Jolie, and it was produced by Clint Eastwood. All right.
Yeah.
And so she took the kid home, and then she said she got the school principal and somebody from church to go to the police too and say, "No, this isn't her son." And they kept saying, "No, don't start trouble here. You know, we don't need this bad press." So what they did with her, more horrific than taking Mrs. Marino, when what they did was horrific, and locking her up in a room at Area 5 or Area 3 for 3 nights. Yeah. They took this woman to the police department. Nobody knew they took her. And then they said to her, "You're causing a lot of trouble with this heat over your son. And you're saying he's not your son. We're telling the press, you're a bad mother." But now they put her in a mental institution, forced her into a mental institution. Where
that was the invention of gaslighting right there.
Yeah. So, but Changeling. I mean, all this was done in 1928. The mayor of the city, they changed the name to Mira Loma, California now. But the mayor at that time in 28, he didn't run for a second term. The chief of police was fired. And I guess the detective in charge of the investigation, I don't know if he was fired or just demoted. But the repercussions were all because a woman was challenging government.
Of course.
And
I mean,
they know, and in the FOIA, Bob,
they used to call them witches back before they had mental institutions.
yeah,
If
right.
women challenged the men or the government or whatever, the power structure, they said, "Oh, you're a witch." You know, so it was like same concept. It just continued over time. They just changed the moving parts, right? I mean, it's the same concept though.
Yeah, but it's a shame that government does that. And they, like I've said, another thing I've often said is when things go bad for government, the first people they save is themselves.
Always.
Okay. And just I'm gone from the police department a long time now because I left in '94. All right. But I'll bet it hasn't changed very much.
I'm bringing up this map. So like, because it's nice to give people visuals. Because you're always talking about area 3, area 5.
Yeah.
So this is the breakdown of the different Chicago police district areas. All right. So this gives people a better idea of what we're talking about. So this is the city of Chicago proper. Okay. And what Bill's talking about, area 5, where he was a detective, is up here in this top area here. And that is the north side of the city.
Right.
Okay. So this is where, like, this is right around like area 3, area 5. Like, this is like Gacy's hood up here.
Right.
You know, like area 3 in particular, area 5 crept in there. You know, so Bill was up here, and you know, like when you talk about kind of the danger zones now, you know, you've got obviously the Austin Boulevard neighborhood is very dangerous, and then the South Side, you know, where you have some of the very dangerous neighborhoods, a lot of gang activity, underserved areas, underdeveloped areas. You got, you know, food islands out there, you know, food deserts where they're just not building, you know, grocery stores. Banks won't, you know, banks won't open branches in the neighborhood. You know, it's like it's like, you know, and that creates a tough situation for cops. I know long after you retired, Bill, you know, on the South Side, especially, you know, I mean, cops making 50, 60 grand a year when they're given the choice of, all right, I'm going to patrol down in area 2. And the likelihood that I'm going to get shot is like above 50%. You know, I mean, like, what are you going to do? Like that trade-off, like no one's going to be willing. This isn't like you've enlisted in the military and you're going to fight a righteous war like in World War II. You know, this is a job. They're paying you shit, and they're expecting you to go into neighborhoods where, you know, there's very little regard for life, because there's this kind of feeling of helplessness, which then turns into just, you know, just a feeling of disdain, you know, down there, where like the kids don't, like, they're not feeling it. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's what they've been like raised in, and it's like, it's a nightmare scenario. And it's just one of those things, like, you know, it doesn't matter who the mayor is. You know, they're not fixing the problems. They're not sinking the money into the infrastructure. You know, they're like, oh, let's put up a community center, which certainly helps. But, you know, it's got to start with schooling. It's got to start with importing jobs into the areas to where people can actually not be the working poor. You know, I mean, that's the reality. It's like, you'll have single mothers working 2 jobs to, you know, raise their kids, because their husbands or, you know, the father of their children have been arrested on some bullshit drug charge and thrown in prison. It's just like this cycle that just, keeps perpetuating the poverty down there. And it's like, it's, you know, for cops, man, it's like, I get it. You know, if I was making that kind of money and I got 4 kids at home, I'm not going into that shit. You know,
Well,
it's like,
let me say this about that, Bob. First off, the city of Chicago is so big. Okay. When I graduated from the police academy in January 15th of 1971, well, okay, half of those class members that were in that recruit class, I never saw again during my entire police career, because I was working far north and I was happy to be working there because that's where I lived. I didn't want to be traveling 2 hours south to work and 2 hours home every day. So I was lucky to be put up there. But the city's so big that it had to be broken up into different areas first. And in each area were smaller areas, which were called districts. All right. And Bob, I'll be honest, yeah, there's a lot of danger to it. I lost a partner, Louis Collada. He wasn't my we were on the same tactical team, 8-man tactical team in 20th District. Okay. And he got, I think it was 1973, he got assassinated off duty. And the offender was caught. Okay. But you guys went to work every day, Bob, in those areas, and they did good jobs. They did. There's a lot of really good policemen that I met in my career, and a lot of very brave guys. I mean, there were some of the bravest acts were done when I was home off duty, and I learned, you know, only you were astounded by hearing what guys did, hanging from a helicopter to get somebody out of the water in the lake. You know, that one police officer actually did do that. You know, amazing things done. But like any other profession, Bob, you're going to have those who don't live up to the same standards. My father's uncle told me when I was coming on the job, when he was a career policeman, never got past patrol, but he worked downtown, he worked in uptown. And when he retired, he bought a resort in northern Wisconsin. And I used to go up there in the summertime. And when he heard that I was thinking about going on to the police department, he sat me down in his bar, brought me a beer, and said, "Bill, I want to tell you something really important." He says, "Bill, be careful who you work with, because some of the people you work with may not be there for the same reason you are." And so true. So true. Like I say, the vast majority of policemen in the city of Chicago, when I was a policeman and today, and there's a whole generation of cops that have already come on and retired since I left. Okay. But it only takes 1, 2, or a couple more to ruin the reputation of the police department.
yeah.
Hence, we have Reynaldo Guevera, Joe Maginowski, and others. Guevara's the star child of the corruption created by the wrongful convictions. Okay. But they were allowed, that group of people was allowed to do what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because they were clearing homicide cases. You know, when I came in from releasing that kid in the one event that I know now happened in 1990, I couldn't remember it at the time because I was ordered not to write any reports. But the releasing an innocent person who was wrongfully arrested, and when I came back to this police department, my boss is standing there in a group waiting for me, saying, "Bill, what the frick are you doing? We're never going to solve this case." So you're telling me you're not really here to solve crimes, Bill. You're just here to clear cases. We don't care if it's the right guy or the wrong guy. What about the family? You're going to tell the family of the kid that got shot. Maybe the kid's a gangbanger. Maybe he's got 10 arrests prior before he got killed, but he got killed. The family wants justice. They want to know. They certainly don't want you to arrest the wrong guy. I'm certain any family doesn't want to arrest the wrong guy. They want you to put the right guy in jail. But for your bosses to tell you, No, it's about statistics, Bill. Clear the crime, and because you got them released from court, do not write any reports. And that became a problem for me because,
well, yeah, that's terrifying.
well, yeah, not only from what I had to go through after that, I was now watching them. This happened in 1990, but I didn't retire.
I'm talking about for us, the citizens. That's terrifying to think that that's the way shit operates. Because people don't know, Bill. Like if the Bill Dorsches of the world didn't exist, like cops toe the line. Cops toe the line all the way down. Like cops will not give the kind of information that you give out. Like that like is just so important so that people have a real concept of what goes on in these departments, especially in big cities. It's like if you're not out here spitting the truth, we're never going to know. You know what I mean? Like that. I mean, that's a big deal because people just have just kind of this misguided notion that police departments just by, in name alone are, just filled with integrity, filled with guys that all have integrity. And like you said, I mean, look, every profession is going to have just bad apples. The problem with the police force, and I've said it a bunch of times, but it rings so true, is that is the one profession where you cannot afford to have bad apples for multiple reasons, but first and foremost because of the amount of power that they have.
Yeah.
And I mean, they can change lives in the blink of an eye.
Oh.
It's like you tell the Guevera stories where, we're hearing from these guys, like as soon as they saw him walk in to, if they're in a convenience store and they see him walk in, they're like, they're struck like, oh my God, there he is. Like I'm probably going down on some bullshit, to have that like constantly hanging over your head. It's scary stuff.
Well, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with Guevara, though. We're going to bring in some of the exonerees, and you're going to hear their stories. Like I told you last week about, we're going to have people coming in who are in gangs and they were selling drugs and they weren't holy people. All right. But they're going to come in and tell you that they were targeted by Guevara because they wouldn't join them and do what they wanted and sell drugs or help, give them protection. And they wanted money. They wanted money. For the money that the gang would pay, they would get protection from this group of officers. But then this group of officers was emboldened because nothing was happening to them. They were then telling them, well, you go out and you rob another gang's hideout and take their stash, bring it to us and we'll sell it and we'll split it with you. So they're working with the gangs. Yeah. Majanowski, in the federal court, there was evidence that he was taking gang members actually to the shooting range to shoot. These guys potentially could kill a policeman or an innocent citizen. But that's how bad he is. But thankfully, Joe Majanowski, who I knew, is doing life in prison. Guevara's walked free all these years because nobody's wanted to prosecute him because even the federal government, they had ample evidence to prosecute others under Guevara, under Majanowski, I mean, like Guevara, and they didn't do it because the government wants this to go away. We don't want to keep this in the press. We don't want it there. And then, like me as a citizen now trying to get information, yeah, my FOIA request is being denied, but they know that if I want to pursue it, I'm going to have to pay an attorney to go in to try to get it for me. And that's a lot of money to be doing, on your own as a citizen trying to get answers. So they know you're not going to do that. So you have to find other ways. And usually the other ways for me come from my contacts with policemen I knew. Who will talk
Scott,
to me.
We realize that.
Yeah.
Old Dorsch, the former cop. The old guy talking is a former Chicago homicide detective. Yeah, there's obviously good cops out there. Tons of them. Problem is the bad ones when you have that much power, that gun and that badge, it's a different amount of power that can be wielded by these people, and it can change lives in the blink of an eye. That's really what this is about. Like, Scott, if you haven't been here, kind of the topic is Reynaldo Guevera, who was a cop that Bill was a whistleblower. Start getting into some Guevara stuff, Bill. Like you've kind of told the baseline story of the first time that Guevara, you became aware of what he was up to, you know, but just how did it play out, like, ultimately for you? Like, ultimately, like, what led to you, like, just feeling compelled that you had to leave the force?
Well, yeah, I had to go. I felt that I was, after the incident where Guevara made the identification and not the witnesses. Okay, after that, I was watching very closely what was going on, what Guevara and others were doing, and I was talking to some people in the command and saying, "Hey, this is not right. This is suspicious. How are we putting this arrest through? I mean, there's really suspicious about the evidence, how it comes in. I mean, Guevara, he was able to work. He didn't even have to come into work for days. He was carried on the books working, but then when he'd come in, he'd have information, and your boss would come up to you, your sergeant would come up to you and say, "Hey, Bill, grab your coat. We're going out with Guevara. We're going to go grab these guys for this murder." You don't even know where that information came from, but you're part of the police department. Your boss says you're going, you go. All right. So your name is now part of that file. Okay. But I tried to avoid Guevara as much as I could. Anything he was touching when he was in Area 5, I tried to stay away from. And he tried to use me, and he used others unknowingly to them by having them do things. Like one day he came up, we had a murder of a woman found murdered in her bathtub. Her throat was cut, and there was no information on it until Guevara suddenly said, "Oh, I have information about who the offender is." And the incident again where the sergeant says, "Grab your coat, Bill, you and your partner, come with us. We're going to go grab this guy." So we go out and grab this guy where he lives on the northwest side of Chicago and bring him back to Area 5. And we're done with it. And I'm glad to be done with it because, like I said, I didn't want to be part of the cases. But then as I'm sitting there working at my desk and my partner's doing whatever he's doing, suddenly Guevara comes up with Helverson and the sergeant and say, "Hey, Bill, we're really busy doing other things with this case. We got the wife came down. The guy we arrested, his wife has come down. The car's in the parking lot. Here's the keys. Go out and search the car." Okay. All right. Okay, we'll go do that. So we go out, got the keys, open the trunk of the car, lift the lid up. Car's got all kinds of stuff in the trunk, but in plain view. I mean, like on top of everything, there were 2 or 3 razor blade knives, packages. All right. But I don't remember now if it was 2 or 3 packages, but they were right on top of everything else. You could not see past that. That stood out. Right. And you knew already that the murder was the weapon used was a razor blade knife because it was found at the crime scene. But when you look in the car, now there's 1 or 2 packages, but there's 1 package that's empty. Wow. This is great news, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the weapon is a razor blade knife, and now you're asked to look in the car and you see this right away in the trunk. Boom. I closed the trunk. Went back upstairs, told the sergeant, "This is what I saw in the trunk of the car. Get a search warrant. I'm done." Okay. And I walked away from it. And this guy got charged with the murder and this and that. I never had to go to court. Most of the time, Guevara was the only guy going to court. Guevara and Helverson were the ones going to court. Other guys that were involved in the case You never even got a subpoena. You never testified in court. All right. But that's how he would try to use other people. Another case, and it wasn't too long ago, and I testified in it from Europe, where I testified in the case, where they had alleged in a case that I received an anonymous phone call from somebody who identified the offender. And that I then told Guevera and Helverson about this phone call, and that's why they went out and arrested this guy. And no, it wasn't a phone call. They said that I talked to another policeman, and he gave me the information. And I testified, I'd never met this policeman in my life. All right. And if I had been given information about who the offender was, not only would I have told Guevera about it if he was handling the case, but I would have written a report that I got this information and who I got it from. But
yeah, and let me jump in case there's any people. I could tell there's some folks that are in the chat that probably haven't like run into the Guevara story. So we're talking about a cop, and I understand what happened with the Star of Rock murder. So, but what we're talking about is a cop who, over the course of 10 to 12 years, from the 90s into the early 2000s, proceeded to close at least 57
mid-1980s. From the mid-1980s.
Okay, I mean, to the early 2000s. So
there were a lot of good homicide detectives, Bob. A lot of guys didn't want to work homicide. I mean, all the areas are divided by property crimes and violent crimes. Okay, the violent crimes guys, you worked a lot of extra hours because you don't go home when there's no schedule when a homicide is going to occur. So you could be just about ready to go home. The homicide comes in, boom, you got another 12 hours of work ahead of you, before you go home. But so there were a lot of good guys. But with Guevera, it was always cases that were lingered with no information, no identity, no possible identity of the offender, and suddenly anonymous phone calls.
Yeah.
Or a jail informant telling he heard conversation in the jail about this guy killing somebody. All right. So yeah, I was suspicious of all that. And I kept telling the sergeant, one sergeant in particular, I trusted, regretfully. I respected the guy at one time. But he fooled me. Because I was going, you're going to meals with these guys too. You can't avoid this. But they're not telling everybody what they're doing. What they're doing is, it's wrong. It's evil. They're putting innocent people in prison. Maybe it's worse than murdering somebody, because you're knowingly taking their life away from them.
Right.
And they're lingering and suffering every day knowing they're innocent. All right.
And they're so not looking for the real culprit of the murder.
But once they make the arrest,
the victims' families aren't getting justice either. It's like
they're calling up the victims' family saying, "Hey, we just made the arrest. We got the killer of your son or your husband." And so the family goes all these years. They want to trust the police. We all want to trust the police. The jurors in the courtroom don't believe that the police would lie. Okay, the guy wouldn't be sitting there accused of this if they didn't know he was guilty.
Right.
It's a big burden for the defense to get past that with a jury.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah. And
tell me about it.
And this is what you're facing. But we're going to be bringing on, you're going to have interviews with people. I mean, you've already had some great people on. Margaret Byrne, who I worked with for about 6 years as she filmed the Guevara cases that I was working on. She filmed the courtroom. We had Jacques Rivera on, who I testified at a civil case after he had spent 27 years in prison, I think, and he was innocent of that crime. Last week, we had Stephanie Weiner in, who was an advocate for the justice system. And she was telling about the women, the mothers, the families, and what they went through trying to get their children out of jail. And we're going to bring in other people, Bob. We're going to bring in, hopefully, people like Marilyn Molero.
Yeah.
A female arrested by Helverson and company, convicted along with two other women. And there were what? Marilyn was 22 years old. And Jacqueline Montanez was 16, and Madeline Mendoza was 17. 3 young women arrested for a double homicide in Humboldt Park. Wrongfully convicted. And even worse, one of them, Marilyn Molero, got the death penalty. The death penalty. All right. And lucky for her, Governor Quinn abolished the death penalty. All right. But not only her, others too. But this is a woman with, I think she had children at the time, and she went to jail for 27 years before she got out. All right. And thankfully, she had a good attorney, Lauren Kiesenberg, and who does great work with the Innocence Project also. And she was able to get the case back into court, and she was exonerated. Okay, hopefully we're going to have her on to tell her story. Okay,
I'm sure she will. I'm sure she'll come on.
I mean, especially for the women listeners out there, having your own children, and suddenly, for no known reason, you're selected as the offender in a double homicide, now facing death.
It's like a nightmare.
I mean, and then the guy that puts you there is going home every day to his family.
Yeah. You know? I mean, the thing about, like, when we start having these guys and these women on that were wrongfully convicted, like, Bill and I can sit around and tell you about them, but nothing is going to make you feel it like hearing it from them, you know. And you guys know that Jacques Rivero, when he was on, I mean, incredibly, like, just a positive spirit. The guy, like, for all the shit that he went through for as much time as he did, two plus decades. And, you know, he comes out the other side just not bitter and angry, but positive, you know, wanting to affect change. And, like, you're going to be shocked at, like, how many of these guys that lost decades as innocent men incarcerated have come out as 44, I think 45. Another one was exonerated today. And, you know, they come out the other side of this, and they're not bitter and angry, but instead they're channeling that into educating, into working with the guys who are coming out after them to help them get their feet on the ground. Because it's not just the loss of years. Like, when you're stuck in prison for 2 decades, you become institutionalized. You lose any footing that you could have possibly had in the real world, in terms of anything, in terms of getting a job, in terms of family, in terms of places to stay. Like, these guys aren't getting paroled. You know, they're not having to go into halfway houses. When they're let out, they're let out. And we're talking about 2 decades later, and some of these guys have nothing. They've not a dime to their name.
The families have to bring them clothing to wear because they have none. They've been in jail for 20 years. The last car they drove was 20 years ago, Bob.
Yeah,
imagine that.
And exactly. It's like the scene in Shawshank, you know, when old Brooks Hadlin gets out, you know, and this is obviously taking place like early 40s or whatever it is, and Brooke gets out. He's like, oh, the world just went ahead and got in a big hurry, you know, because, like, when he went in, there were no cars. Same shit, except different decades, you know. It's like there were no cell phones, like Jacques was talking about. He's like, there wasn't such a thing as a cell phone when I went in. And he's like, I come out and everybody's got phones and they're, like, watching TV. It's like, it was a whole different, it was like landed on an alien planet. But beyond that, it's like they're getting these huge settlements, but those take years. It's not like they're walking out in the city of Chicago saying, oh, here's $17 million, man. Sorry about that. No, they got to struggle. They got to survive for years and years after they get out of prison. So it's like it doesn't end. So my point being that when you start to meet all these people when they're on here with us, and you can just see the positivity that comes from them, where they have every right to be very angry and very,
Yep.
very bitter, but they choose not to be that way. It's very uplifting, and it's very eye-opening in the sense that you're hearing the stories. Like, because I was really trying to draw it out of Jacques, like how brutal it was going in, and he was just like, he's like, yeah, I was gonna go in. He's like, I thought I'd beat the case, and then when I realized I wasn't gonna beat the case, he's telling his wife, he's like, look, like I'm fighting this thing, but move on. Like, it's not fair to you to sit here and wait for me because I might never get out. It's like to hear him tell the story about realizing that, like when there's that loss of hope when you're in there wrongfully convicted, knowing that you didn't do what they have you in prison on. I mean, like it's like at some point, like how do you control your mind to like quit just completely and totally focusing on that all the time? Like I always sit there and think, like, if I was wrongfully convicted, I'd be so obsessed, so obsessively thinking about it. And like, you can't get anybody on the outside to help. It's not, you're not just calling up lawyers. Hey man, it's like, it's like everything is like moving mountains.
After a few years of incarceration, you've lost your best friends. They're not calling you or writing you a letter anymore. Your family's walking away. When Jacques said, remember, or go on, move on with your life. Find somebody else. I'm going to be locked up here. I didn't do it, but I'm going to be locked up here.
Right. Maybe forever. I might do the whole bid. Yeah, it's crazy, man. So we're really looking forward to, and like I think every like episode, Bill, like kind of the beginning, we've got to just tell people, because we can't assume that everybody's seen all of our lives. Like at the beginning, we got to tell everybody like who Guevara is, what he did, how many people they've been exonerated, so that people always have that kind of baseline. You know what I mean? So they always know who we're talking about. It's like if we get new viewers in here that aren't familiar with Guevara, because nobody's familiar with Guevara, it's like the worst kept secret of all time that this guy is like quite literally the worst cop that's ever walked the planet. I mean, the guy's like an absolute monster who's collecting his pension, who was never charged, and it's like, I don't get the not charging him. I mean, Chicago's already paying out on his cases. Like they're right. That's what I'm saying. Like the financial hit is there. Like, why aren't you just like going after him? Because the fact that he's walking around still collecting a pension blows my mind. Just blows my mind.
The city doesn't want to go after them and others because they're part of the problem. When you put Guevara on trial, you're putting the city, Chicago Police Department, on trial. You're putting the city on trial, and they're saying, like I said, first person you save is yourself.
100%.
Okay? But again,
he's sitting there saying, if I'm going down, you're going down with me. He's telling everybody that was with him and above him that was in cahoots. He's like, I'm not going down alone, sucker. So you better stop this shit in its tracks. But it's just, it's like a never ending story. Right?
I want to say again, I want to remind people, I work with some of the most astounding police officers, great police officers that were mentors. And I learned something every day. And as a policeman, like my father's uncle had told me, be careful who you work with. I learned every day. Sometimes what I was seeing and learning was the wrong thing. And I recognized it, and I moved away from that person or that thing. I try to always do the right thing. And there's so many good cops on the job. And even today, they go to work every day, not knowing if they're going to come home.
So true.
Right. In some of those areas, you heard shots every day. You heard shots every day.
Yeah. I mean, we are certainly not sitting here. I mean, Bill, you're proof positive that there's incredible people that do the job. You know, I mean, that's facts. And there are a majority of the people that are out there risking their lives for shit money doing that job are good people that go in with the right intentions, you know. But like the problem with, yeah, you're going to get the turds who sneak in, who get in, who had bad intentions from the get, you know, but that's not a majority of cops, you know. But you get those guys that are on the job who are out there and they realize in very short order just exactly how much their life really is in danger. And they realize that paycheck that they get is not nearly enough. And if they've got a dude who's on the take in their department and that little taste, that little extra taste that they can get, and they're like, no one knows. You know, it's like, I get the temptation. You know, I mean, by way of being underpaid, it creates that temptation to where, you know, am I going to sell my soul to the devil? Am I going to take the taste? But once you take the taste, they got their hooks in you. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. I mean, if you go into a drug house and you recover the narcotics and a lot of money, that, you know, you're like every other human being in the world. You got bills to pay. You know, you think about it, you're looking at it and thinking, gee, my kid needs this or that and everything else. But it's the wrong thing to do. And hopefully you don't do it. And most guys don't do it.
Right. But, I mean, that's facts. I mean, that's, you know, most of the time the cops get it right on arrest. Most of the time they do great work. You know, it's like the whole problem with is the bad apples. You know, they spoil the bunch.
But see, Bob, the code of silence does exist.
For sure.
You know, but it's not only the police department. Doctors don't report bad doctors.
100%. So true.
School teachers don't report bad teachers. You know, it's the same in every profession. All right.
100%.
I mean, the time that I said that when working in the 20th district, we had a burglary pattern, Rogers Park area. Me and my partner driving in the TAC unit in plain clothes in an unmarked car. We see two guys running out from a gangway carrying television sets and things like that. Obviously, we stop them, find out they just burglarized the house, put them in custody, driving them into the station. And the one guy says, "Oh, I'm not going to jail." And I said to him, "Well, you're in handcuffs. It looks like it." And he said, "No. My father's an alderman."
Right.
Okay. He's an alderman. Okay. So you go into your office with this kid, you know, and you've got his name. Yeah, there's an alderman with that name. You tell your sergeant, you know, we got a good burglary arrest, got him with all the stuff coming out, but he says he's the alderman's son. Whoa, sergeant, choom. Never saw him run before in my life. All right. All the way down to the commander's office. And then about 10 minutes later, commander and him come back, pull us out in the hall and say, "Don't write any reports. Don't do anything. Don't make any phone calls. Just nothing."
Yeah.
Half an hour later, he comes back, pulls us out again and says, "Listen, this is the way it is. This burglary never happened. Yeah. I'm going to make sure that the property gets back to the family. This arrest was never made. Do you understand?" And me and my partner, he knew we were really pissed off. Yeah. Right. And he says, wait. He says, "You don't understand, guys. Now I own the alderman. The alderman doesn't own me."
Truth.
And it goes that way. And not only that, I mean, the coppers that work the street, some of the best coppers in the world, are never going to get out of patrol. They're never going to get out of a tactical unit. They're never going to get out of gang crimes or those kind of units. But you have guys coming on the job, new guys only on the job a couple of years, like one detective, new detective who came up in Area 5. And I was to train him for a little bit. And one of the first things he tells me is, "Yeah, I'm not going to be here for a long time." You know, what? Yeah, no, I'm connected, man. I'm going, you know. And boy, did he go far.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the way it is in the police department. You're promoting people because of the politician who says, "Hey, I got this guy." You know.
Oh, I mean, the city of Chicago, probably more than any other town. Yeah. I mean, So the way like I wasn't even law enforcement before I went to law school, and like I was in between. I was working as uh I was a social worker for Catholic Charities, working with seniors. So after college, before I went to law school, and I had a buddy whose brother was a Chicago cop, Greek guy, and this is when Blagojevich was running for his first office, long before governor. Like I think it was a state rep, something like that. Whatever Blagojevich was running for, and who was his father-in-law? Who was Blagojevich's father-in-law?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What's his face? Whatever, a longtime Chicago politician,
Right.
like
Yes.
big.
On the
Was it
south side. Yeah.
Madigan?
Yeah.
Madigan?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So right. So Madigan. So like I had tried to get a job with like this. I was, I had a sociology degree. I knew I was going to go to law school, but I didn't want to go right away. So I had applied to DCFS. I wanted to go try to help kids. I wanted to try to help kids that were being abused and neglected. And I couldn't get a job. Like it was like I got 100% on the exam twice, the state exam twice. I couldn't even get an interview. I think it's because I was a guy. Like they thought it was weird that I was a guy trying to get into like a basically all female profession with social workers. So I couldn't even get a sniff on it. So my buddy, whose brother was a cop, Madigan had recruited an army of people to go knock on doors and to get petitions signed to get uh to get Blagojevich, who was in prison until recently, who became the governor of Illinois, like elected, to get him on the ballot and then get him elected. And he's like, look, dude, he's like, this is the way the city works. You go out here, you knock on the doors, you're gonna get a city job. And the city jobs, whether it's parks, streets and sand, whatever it is, it's like if you get in on a city job, you just are set. You're not going to make a huge amount of money, but you're going to get great benefits. You're going to get a good pension, and it's just a solid gig, and it's like, but that's how political it was. Like, it was like when I
Yeah.
went in on the honest route, trying to get in with, Department of Children and Family Services, passed like ace like literally got hundreds on the state exam twice, couldn't even get an interview. And then I come to find out, oh, I got to go knock on doors for Blagojevich, and that's how I'm going to get a city gig. I mean, that's just how Chicago works. It's how it's always worked. It's how it
Right.
will always work in the future, now, in the past. It's like it's a machine here, and it's just a highly political city, and it always will be.
Right.
And it goes on every level. It's cops, it's firefighters. It's like my son, he's a firefighter up in Countryside Fire Protection District. He couldn't even sniff a Chicago Fire Department job. Like, I mean, it's like,
Mhm.
it's such a
Yeah.
political beast, it's like, you just got to know somebody. It's nepotism at its finest. So yeah, it's all a bunch of stuff. So, all right, man, we're running long. I've had a long day. You're up early. We want to let you guys know right here, right now, Bill is traveling to London next Wednesday.
Yeah.
He has to, he's got to pack, he's got to prepare things. We're not having a show next Tuesday or the following Tuesday because we're going to be in London the weekend after that, or the weekend that follows, and then that next Tuesday. So 2 Tuesdays we're going to miss. The third Tuesday we're back on. We hope to start having the parade of these just unbelievable stories of tragedy, which turn into redemption. And they're unbelievable. I mean, if you can sit here and listen to these people tell these stories of their lives and what they've overcome and what they've turned into on the other side coming out, and you're not moved, then, you should probably check your pulse, because it's very moving stuff. They're devastating stories, but there is redemption in the end for these guys. They're unbelievable stories. So don't forget to buy Bill's book. If y'all would throw the link in there, let's see that book again, Bill. What's it called?
Omnipotent. Don't
Move it up
ask,
to the
don't
camera.
tell.
Move it up to the camera. There you go. There you go. It's a classic. It's a classic. Everyone in chat that's bought it loves it. Everyone raves about it. If you're in London, don't forget, 20th through the 22nd, or 21st, 22nd, I think. Bill and I in CrimeCon UK in London. Bill's signing books. I'm doing a panel with Chris Hansen. We talked about it today. It's going to be cool.
Super.
Yeah, it's going to be neat. It's going to be neat. Like I did a Zoom with them today. We talked about what our subject matter is. We're going to get into it. It's very interesting. We're going to be talking about the charging of parents in these school shootings.
Yeah, sure.
Pretty interesting stuff. I'm passionate about it. Not on the side that some might be, but I think these parents are on the hook. So and so is Hansen. We're both of the same mindset. It's like something has to be done. Like I got kids in school. I'm sick of this shit. Like start paying attention to your kids, or you're going to be responsible for them. So, all right, Bill, as always, you're amazing. I adore you. I can't wait to see you in person in a couple of weeks, man. Less 10 days, not even. So, I won't see you before we're there. I want you to travel safely. Bring your books. If you got any tchotchkes, bring tchotchkes. Like a little giveaway tchotchkes. But if you happen to be there, make sure that you're coming and visiting. Bill will be at our table. We're hanging together. Bill will tell stories. He'll sign books, all that great stuff. I'll have stickers and all kinds of goodies I'm giving away. And to the mods, thank you so much. Thank you, Steve-O, for sending them back to me. I sent them to Steve-O. He's my brother over at Publicly Buzzed for Murder Church tonight. They were watching the Proctor trial. Thank you for sending them back, Steve. I love you, man. Mods, you're the best in the business. Dizzy, I adore you. Thank you for all the work. Super long days. We started at 7:45 this morning, Bill. I started streaming a trial. So and the guy went till like 5. I had to dip out because my kid had a volleyball game. So Dizzy, my mod down there that always sits quietly behind the scenes and makes the magic happen, took the rest of the stream. And then I took a few hour break, cooked some fish, fed the family, watched an hour of the debate, and then I hung with you. So that's it. For all of you guys that hung out there with us all day, appreciate you. If you're new, please remember to like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. Please, please, please. Spread the word. We got a good channel. We bring out a lot of great content, stuff that you're not hearing everywhere else. As a matter of fact, no one else has this guy, Bill Dorsch, only here, right here. And spread the word. The guy's got more stories. Like we haven't even scratched the surface of Bill Dorsch stories.
For sure.
That's the funny thing about it. So, all right, Bill, you're the man. I'll see you in 8 days, something like that. Short order.
We'll see you there. Take care, buddy.
All right,
Safe
everybody. Take care, y'all.